What you are seeing here are French yellow vest rioters destroying a storefront in Paris. This exact scene has played out hundreds, if not thousands of times across France over the weekend. This is, of course, the second weekend in a row of record-setting riots taking place throughout both the streets of Paris, but also France as a whole. These riots, of course, sprung about over increased taxes levied against the French working class. President Macron of France attempted to appease and end these riots by delaying and promising to potentially repeal the new taxes altogether. But it would seem it is far too late for that, as this has now become something different, something bigger. It is about anti-globalization for some French citizens, while other French citizens simply dislike Macron for what they see as being far too pro-big business and reforming entitlements. It is for these two reasons President Macron has managed to both align the right and the left against his administration in unison. Now, in preparation for these riots, police took to the high schools to detain rowdy students ahead of this weekend's main event, if you will. These students have been a flashpoint for these riots due to their anger over school reform. Now, Paris, in preparation for the inevitable weekend riots, both closed the Eiffel Tower for the weekend and deployed over 90,000 police officers. As you can see from this clip, the police more than had their work cut out for them. Specifically, what you are seeing is a single officer being separated from the larger police unit, and then thrown to the ground. Beaten by the crowd, I might add, until a sympathetic yellow vest protester helped the officer to his feet and then ushered him to relative safety. Now, there was great reason for all parties involved to be worried for their safety, as we will cover throughout the video. But riots have a special way of bringing out the stupid in people. Take a look at this man nearly killing himself with a piece of heavy equipment. But speaking of stupidity, some protesters seem to have taken it upon themselves to destroy significant pieces of French heritage, as you can see on screen now. The defacing of objects such as this is something I could never support. Now, at the time of recording, nearly 600 people have been arrested for rioting, and as I mentioned previously, the Yellow Vest movement is an amalgamation of several sub-movements. It would be difficult to defend the actions of all the protesters. For example, as you can see here, Yellow Vest members shut down a highway by blocking traffic with their bodies. This is particularly dangerous, as just last weekend, a Yellow Vest member was killed while attempting to block traffic. But the Yellow Vests did not stop there. As you can see, the protesters also shut down an airport, again using their bodies as a blockade. The police, for their part in all of this, have responded with a massive amount of force. Be it justified or not, I leave that to you to decide. As you can see in this clip, the police nearly trampled a man while attempting to clear a street. The police were also forced to bring in armored vehicles in an attempt to bring this rioting to an end. Allegedly, this is the first time armored vehicles have been used in Paris since 2005. The rioters, faced with really overwhelming force, responded in some very creative ways. As you can see here, a man fending off tear gas canisters with a tennis racket. Or here, where protesters, unable to overcome the police by force, decided to then cover the police in paint. Now, I believe there's a legitimate case to be made for police overreaction in these riots. I mean, just take a look at this clip. One man being beaten to the ground by no less than 5 officers. Or the several clips which follow of protesters being treated, in my mind at least, a bit unfairly.
Ça va là, oh, ça va?
At this point, I believe it necessary to have at least some compassion, or at least understanding, for what the police are dealing with. This is now nearly a month-long riot these officers are involved in, many of who may not even be based in Paris and are likely not even full-time police officers. Well, what does this mean? These officers are likely working extremely long shifts and every weekend, missing their family and friends. Not that this is an excuse for an excessive use of force, but frustration will build in anyone. In the military, we called this compassion fatigue. No matter how good the cause, you will begin to resent the people you are there to help once you have been forced to endure suffering for long enough. I would expect if these riots drag on much longer, the violence from both sides will surely escalate. I also believe it necessary to point out the clear media hypocrisy, or at least bias. In Syria, rioters were dubbed as protesters, and their events called demonstrations. In short, the media had extreme sympathy for the protesters in Syria, whereas when riots take place in the global's haven of Paris, the members are labeled thugs and their movements called dangerous. A little odd, isn't it? But again, I don't think it can be stated enough. This movement is the amalgamation of many sub-movements, as you can see in this picture, with a clear socialist agenda. Or in this picture, something very different. But there is some real news we need to take note of. These protests have now spilled into both Belgium and the Netherlands in full swing. Hundreds of Yellow Vest members are protesting in these countries as we speak. And as you can see here, they have been met with riot police, and in this case, mace to the face. What is the future of this movement? Will it spread across Europe like wildfire? How will it come to an end? Will Macron resign? There are many unanswered questions that I cannot begin to predict. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, special thank you to my Patreon subscribers, and because this video cannot be monetized due to violent imagery, consider supporting me on Patreon today. Until next time, guys, peace out.